Hey everybody, it's Sean. The reason I'm recording this is because I felt compelled to put this out there in front of the episode you are about to listen to. It's not a warning by any means. I just felt that I had something to say. And, what can I say? I've got the power to hit the record button and publish this as part of the episode. Back in April of 2016, Brett and I did episode 84 entitled Inclusion in RPG Hobby. And at the time, we felt compelled to... There was an incident that I won't go into that was making its ways around online social media circles, articles, blogs. And rather than address that particular situation specifically, we wanted to just highlight the fact that we need to be better at including other people and welcoming them into tabletop role-playing games. We didn't want to isolate anybody. And some of you might have listened to that episode, and some of you may not have. Certainly your choice. But I would encourage you to do so. And many of our audience, I like to think that every member of our audience that chooses to listen to us has some common views that we may share. And we hope that those views that we share are obviously positive. And at that time, in that episode, it may not even have been targeted towards you. It was more of let me back up. There are many of us that aren't aware of some of the negative things that occur within the tabletop RPG hobby. You may not be online in certain social groups or social networking platforms, but that doesn't mean that some of the negatives that occur in the hobby aren't happening. And with episode 84, I think our objective was to simply say, hey, it's something to be aware of. And if you are aware of it, that we can be better, is all. Better people, welcoming people. And if you haven't witnessed this, and you're obviously not a bad person, you could help us make it a better hobby. It's getting better. If you look back on the origins of the hobby, it was a pretty isolated hobby. It was made by a lot of designers, developers of white, male, heterosexual, middle-aged guys. It just was at the time. That was the majority. I mean, D&D had female and male genders in first edition AD&D, and female gender had different ability caps. We don't want to rehash the past, but it's not something we want to sweep aside and disregard. There's something to be learned from looking back in history. At least I personally think so. And so we've moved forward as a society, and I don't want to get too deep. It sounds like I'm getting really deep. But we've moved forward in society. Things have changed. Policy, laws, civil rights. Some are very obvious. At least I hope they are to you. But there was still a lot of work to do. And as it related to the RPG hobby, we are getting better. At least I believe that we are. Do we have more work to do? Yes, of course we do. Some of us may not understand that or even see that or be aware of it, but it's true. We do. And with your help, understanding, and exposure to some of what we are about to tell you in this episode, we can together make this a better hobby. And I think that's what I felt compelled to talk about, because there was a discussion between Brett and I, and it is, and I should even say for the record, it is obviously not lost on the fact that we are not a diverse podcast. Neither Brett nor I are female or transgender or gay or obviously lesbians. We are not people of color. We are your middle-aged, hetero, white, privileged guys. And I've even thought, well, I've learned about implicit bias, and, we've grown up in our social circles with the parents that we've had or the child rearing that we had, the friends that we've had, the communities we've grown up with, all of which somewhat forms us. And as we grow as people, we learn to have different experiences and exposure to different things. And hopefully with those experiences, we as individuals can grow. And by growing, we open our eyes to different things, different ways of doing things, looking at different people's or from different perspectives, or being able to understand different perspectives that aren't just our own. So when we wanted to record this episode, I was a little, I wasn't sure of what direction we were going to go. But I know that Brett and I wanted to bring somebody on the show that didn't have the same background as he and I. We didn't want to have another middle-aged, hetero, male, white guy to come on the show and talk about a particular topic. Of course we will. I think it's inevitable. We know a lot of middle-aged hetero white guys. And hopefully we will get better at bringing on other types of individuals on the show. And that's something that I think we can be better at. So we invited Paige Leitman to be on the show to offer a different perspective. And with that perspective, I didn't know if it was, hey, Paige, can you come on and talk about things you might encounter as a female in the hobby, in the positions you've had as a moderator of a large Facebook RPG group, or your experiences running or playing in events at tabletop RPG conventions, and maybe open our eyes to some of the things that actually take place. Because I think that we hear about some of those things and then we think, oh, that couldn't possibly happen, or somebody couldn't have possibly said that. I mean, how ridiculous. And for you, sharing some of what I go back to is that commonality that we share, those positive things, they seem absurd. And hopefully they do sound absurd, because I like to think that you share the same views that we do when it comes to treating people equally. But it didn't really go that way. What we did decide on was the format that you're about to listen to. I don't think it's a bad format. It obviously isn't a format, or the dialogue wasn't something where I felt was not important, that I felt that should not be heard and listened to and discussed, because what Paige and Brett and I talk about in this episode is definitely important. And we all need to be aware of what we'll be talking about in this episode. Now, we may have people, and as you're listening to this, you may not understand why we've put this episode out, or that it's more political than you care to enjoy. Now, keep in mind, we don't talk about anything political in this episode. But what people often do is they often confuse politics with social and society issues. And yes, some do coalesce into the other, but that is not what we're trying to get at. It's not a political debate in what we're about to talk about. And I'll tell you in short, so that you can really decide on whether you want to listen to the rest of this or not, is we and Paige was nice enough to come up with very distinct ways, very specific ways to help the hobby bring other people into it through the use of diversity and inclusion. Now, if that is something that bothers you, I'm not sure what to tell you. Maybe just listen, and you will find something that you weren't really aware of at one particular point. Maybe it's something you didn't consider. This is an opportunity that if you listen to it, it may be something that opens your eyes a bit. Or you may be somebody that would totally get this and understand it completely, and take action with it, because you may be a person that runs a convention or has a game at a game store, or you're an owner of a game store, or you know an owner of a game store. And some of these things will certainly help attract other types of people than two hetero, middle-aged white guys. And you may just find a new friend that has a different perspective because they grew up in a different environment, different type of family, whatever that is. But that doesn't mean that they're a threat to our hobby. It doesn't mean that we have to treat them strangely. We can treat them like the rest of our tribe, with open arms, wanting to share our passion for this great hobby of ours. Why wouldn't we want to do that? So I apologize if this seems a little trite, but I don't know if we nailed what I was hoping to get out of the show. And frankly, we could make it another topic down the road where we do have people of color, women, LGBTQ, that can help us understand that we, Brett and I, haven't had the same experiences they have in society, and how has that impacted their ability to get into tabletop role-playing games. Because only through that knowledge and perspective can we say, oh, that was really dumb. I was at a gaming convention and a woman was sitting next to me, and I leaned over to her and said, oh, are you here with your gamer boyfriend? Did we have a malicious intent with that statement? No. Does it sound bad? And is it bad? Yes. But only if you actually know you said it and we're aware of it. I've made a joke in the show where I've said, I'm going to go around and when people assume I'm a gamer, I'm going to say, no, I'm here with my gamer girlfriend or my gamer wife. Because those are the things that are things we don't really consciously think about, but they just come out because we're not exposed to some of this stuff. So with these different perspectives, we can become better. We don't look across the table as a middle-aged white, hetero white guy and ask a stupid question. That really puts somebody in a strange place. I mean, can you imagine fielding that question? I mean, some people take it very well and in stride that they probably want to tap you on the head and say, oh, you're so dumb. And then some get really offended. So hopefully you will enjoy the rest of this episode. It is the interview with Paige Leitman, which will follow right after I get off this mic. There is no random encounter. There's no die roll because it did go quite lengthy, but that doesn't mean that it's not valuable. And we will, of course, thank Paige Leitman, but I will do it here now. Thank you to Paige. Thank you to individuals that have not had good experiences with some of us, middle-aged, hetero white guys. But you decided to say, oh, you're so dumb, and still stay in the hobby to do good and to enjoy the passion and love we have for tabletop role-playing games. And now on to the show. All right, we are joined by the co-host of D&D Roundtable podcast. She's written adventures for Adventurers League for community content to include Dragon Con, which you might have heard of. She's even gotten noticed by Bethesda. She's written for Gnome Stew and Real Women of Gaming, and she moderates D&D 5th Facebook group that has over 130,000 members on Facebook. Let us welcome Paige Leitman.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, Paige.
Hey.
How the heck are you?
I'm doing great.
Very good.
So we've asked Paige to be on the show to help two hetero middle-aged white guys that play RPGs to give us a different perspective and some of the things that we as a community can do better around inclusivity.
Absolutely. Sean and I, some of our listeners, as you know, and we don't read everything, every letter we get or every email and so on. It's not like we're plagued with, big Santa Claus like level of letters come filing in. But people ask us periodically, hey, it would be great if you could get a different perspective. It would be great. Hey, let's get some women on the show, talk about different things. And what we wanted to do was we want to start including more stuff in our show. And how do we make this more, Sean and I be more inclusive ourselves and our perspectives and stuff, because we have our own limited views. And we thought, that's a really good topic for the first thing to go at. And it just happens to be that our buddy Alex Kammer knows Paige. And
Alex is a great guy.
Yep, we love Alex. One of our favorite people. So we wanted to get Paige on the show and talk about, we were just kind of hashing a little of this out beforehand because it's kind of a nebulous piece. So we want to try to hit four main topics here. If I'm running a con, what can I do better? I personally need that intel. I'm running a gaming convention with 1,000 to 1,200 people. I want to know about that. if you're in charge at a game store, you're in a not as large as a con perhaps, but you've got AL at your store. You've got groups, you've got gaming going on, you've got people coming and doing this stuff, be it Magic Gathering, what have you. Then you got your home group as GM, and then as a player, that perspective. So, Paige, what do you think? You on board?
I'm on board, and
Sweet.
that's kind of a good way to look at it because. As a community, as a society, the tabletop role-playing game world operates at different scales. You have kind of the huge scale, like the publisher scale, which is one way to look at it. Then you've got like conventions, which are kind of big, and game stores kind of smaller. Then home games. Then what are you as a person? So there are interesting things and different things kind of going on at each of those levels. And women, people of color, the LGBT community have things to add and things to offer at all of those levels.
Absolutely. Because I just from running my small little con, evergon.org, just in case you know. Anyway, just from running my little convention, there's a lot of things. You start setting things up, and I look to Alex Kammer, what he's done with Game Home. Like, how can I do this right? / make sure it's fun for me, fun for my attendees. And one of the things that Alex talked to me about was, I think some of the things we'll probably go over today is, how do you make sure that you don't have what I would almost call like a roadblock or barrier to entry, something that stops someone simply by reading your website or looking at what you're promoting that says, oh, I would not be good and comfortable there. And then when they arrive, how do you make sure that it is a welcoming, inviting place where people are like, oh, I can be me here and not have to, worry about being accosted, bothered, all of the horrible things that Sean and I have talked about on the show and many people have also handled. So, Paige, how do you want to attack that one? Should we start with a con and see where we go?
Yeah, let's start with cons. So, and let me put this as a note beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I am one woman. I am one single woman. I am white, and I am married to a man. So any problem I have is gonna be much smaller than a problem that a black woman would have, or that a person in a wheelchair might have, or that a member of the LGBT community who's open about it might have. So looking at it from an intersectional viewpoint will show you kind of the depth of how deep some of these problems go. And I strongly recommend that in the future, you guys get a chance to talk to someone who is a member of the LGBT community or is a person of color or who is mobility limited. And I can hook you up with some of those people afterwards.
Oh, that would be great, actually.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yes, I have some contacts who would love to talk to you.
Oh, cool. Very nice. Thank you.
So from a convention standpoint, we talked about two ways to look at it. Barriers, what keeps people out. And by people, I'm talking of non-majority players, so non-white males, non-heterosexual white males. And then what helps invite some of those minority players in. So let's talk about barriers. I think some of the biggest barriers for a convention is uncertainty. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go to this convention and then I'm going to end up playing a game and I'm going to be the only woman or the only black person or the only person in a wheelchair or the only person who's hearing impaired, and people are going to look at me funny and it's going to be weird. Like, nobody likes to be the only one.
Yeah, which is
the first one.
Which is interesting, right? Because gamers traditionally, at least we've talked about this. I'm 46. I started in third grade. We're used to being, we're the quote unquote outcasts. We're the weirdos, and we all get together. But then when you go to this thing, it's like
you're among your tribe.
Yeah, you're among your tribe, and it turns out your tribe looks a lot like you. Much like when Sean and I were riding motorcycles, we'd go out, ride Harleys, go places, and it turns out everybody bought the same fucking Harley Davidson costume we had on. So it's I'm a rebel, I'm an outcast, I'm wearing the same $350 designer leather jacket that badass is. All right, cool.
It is your own particular version of those dumb fraternity shirts, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, like I said, from running a con, I'm like, I want to make sure it's accommodating, but yeah, it's a perspective I know is different than mine. So, keep going.
Oh my God, I'm the frat boy of RPG gaming. Oh,
bro.
oh
Dude.
no.
Bruh.
Oh, yuck.
Oh,
No, not that bad. Not
good.
that
I don't want.
bad. So one of the barriers is looking at the marketing for your convention. So obviously the chainmail bikini has a storied history in Dungeons and Dragons, and having played since 1981, before most of your listeners were born, I've seen a few chainmail bikinis in my day. But that chainmail bikini says something to women who might play there. They're like, oh, does this mean that the game's going to have like kind of creepy sexual content? Like they expect my character to be in a chainmail bikini, they expect me to be in a chainmail bikini. So look at your advertising. Is it cheesecake? If so, why? What message are you sending?
That's a good point. Yeah, because the simplest thing of the graphic you have, is it a landscape, a seascape, whatever, and is the person on the deck of the ship look like a Clyde Caldwell painting? Love you, Clyde. Or do they, yeah, is it the scantily clad warrior princess look, or is it like, look, these are regular adventuring people, or so on? No, that totally makes sense.
And WotC ditched the chainmail bikini. Like,
Yes.
they ditched it in 3rd edition. 4th edition was a little better, and then Paizo, bless their dear and fluffy hearts, charged into Pathfinder with very female-friendly art. And at that point in time, when 5th edition started coming out, Wizards of the Coast knew that they had to step up their game. I think they would have done it anyway, but because of this very strong stance that Paizo took in Pathfinder, they had to. If they hadn't, it'd have been super weird. So, in a sense, at that point in time, you're looking at the messaging for your convention stepping up to match the publisher of the most popular role-playing game ever made.
Fair enough.
So that can be part of a barrier. Another barrier is where and how you advertise. So a lot of conventions are advertised in game stores. And we'll talk about game stores, but even though it is slowly and wonderfully changing, the occupancy of game stores tends to be overwhelmingly white and male. So looking at how you advertise, are you advertising at maybe a card shop or a comic shop that is in an area that has a primarily Latino community?
Yeah, because where you put the ad tells the people, I'm expecting you to come here because this is something you will enjoy.
100%. 100%. Okay. Yeah. So I live in Atlanta, which, as anybody can tell you, is the bright, shiny center of the universe. And you can't convince anybody from Atlanta otherwise. And the south side of the city tends to have more diverse neighborhoods than the north side of the city inside the perimeter. And by intentionally targeting comic shops, game shops, there aren't many game shops on the south side of the city, but by intentionally targeting comic shops and card shops on the south side of the city, you are inviting non-white players to your show. Like,
no, that makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. And you think game store? Well, obviously, if I'm running a game con, I should advertise in gaming stores. And no, that totally makes. Which gaming stores are you going to be in? Yeah, if all you do is put it in the local one on the other side of town, to use your example, I'm inadvertently or advertently limiting my audience.
Yep, 100%.
Good point.
Also, where you advertise online can make a difference. So if you're advertising on blackgirlnerds.com, which is kind of a very cool site that I think is pretty neat, you're sending a message about who's invited. Also, some of your activities at your convention may be more appealing to different demographics. So cosplay, if your con has a big cosplay element, that tends to attract more women than role-playing games. It's just part of the process. And the trick is, once you get a woman into your convention, maybe you can tempt her to play games.
Oh.
Bait and also switch. Yes.
Very true. Very, very true. Got
Yes.
it. Got it.
We have a group in Atlanta called formerly known as Atlanta Drunks and Dragons. Now they just call themselves Atlanta Dungeons and Dragons, and they are proselytizing D&D as a bar game. So normally we think of like trivia as a bar game or darts or something like that. No, these guys go into bars in kind of the cool area of downtown Atlanta, and they're like, "Hey, we're playing D&D. Anybody want to play? Has anybody ever heard of D&D? Does anybody want drink specials while they're sitting at our table? Yes? Okay, come on, we'll give you some dice."
That's awesome.
Right. And so it is literally the bait and switch, and it works because people like D&D. They love telling stories together. Some other ways to make your con more inviting, obviously specifically inviting those people, but one way to alleviate the fear of being the only one there is have women and people of color in positions of responsibility and power at your convention and put they faces on stuff.
Okay.
Because that way players are looking at it saying, well, I mean, I guess if they had black guys that are, running this part of the show, that are obviously black people are. Obviously, if there's a woman in charge of this part of the con, then they have a, it's not all white guys running it, so it's probably not all white guys going to be there.
No, that makes sense. No, that's legit. I mean, I look at the co-owner director. It's Bill, me, and Chris. And Chris is, if it weren't for her and her brilliant brain for money, because she's like CPA level teacher, we wouldn't have a con because I suck at math. And my wife told me the first thing, she's like, "You need somebody who knows money better than you." I'm like, "Well, honey, that's everybody." So, but anyway, yeah, that makes sense, because somebody like that being in the special shirt, they're obviously in charge. They get to make decisions. They're doing important things. No, that's it. What you're saying is so like, well, duh, Brett, in my head, but it's a small piece, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't. Yeah. If it doesn't happen,
Well, it doesn't happen by accident. That's
true.
The thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen by accident, because there's this idea of, a convention is a meritocracy, and we're going to get somebody to do the money, and we're just going to pick the best person to do it. And, my friend Fred does money, and my friend John does people's taxes, and my friend Mark is a mathematician. We'll get, these are people I know. But until you say, yeah, Fred, Mark, and John can do it, but so can Jennifer, and so can Michelle, and so can Cindy, and everything being held equal, let's pick one of the women because everybody else is a dude.
Oh yeah, I mean, and again, it's why not?
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I totally agree. Okay, that makes sense.
So that kind of representation in places of power can make a convention very inviting. Also, having women DMs and DMs that come from other minority groups that you want to attract is also very can be very inviting. Because that way, when you go to the table, you're not the only one.
Makes sense. Even if you're walking through, and it's this person looks like or similar to me, or I share a resemblance to, therefore I am, Game Master is a position of power, right?
It is.
So that person's doing things, and they're running and they're leading a charge at that table. They're in control of that table. Okay, I'm with you.
And specifically saying, like, it sounds weird when you're looking for DMs, and believe me, we need about 100 DMs to make DragonCon go. It sounds weird when you're looking for DMs to say, "Hey, I'd like some women DMs, or I'd like some trans DMs, or I specifically want to find some black DMs or Latino DMs." And you kind of have to hunt them down. And it takes sometimes a little bit of specifically inviting them, because it's like, "Hey, I have a convention, I need DMs." Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, so does everybody else. Whatever,
right,
dude.
Right? But to specifically go to John and say, "John, look, I'd really like you to DM for my con. You are black, and there are not enough people of color at our convention, and it's really important to me to have you there as a DM in a position of power to show people that this is a game for everyone."
I feel so on my side, Paige, when I hear them, like, I love the idea. And then as a con organizer, I go, oh, am I going to be seen as a patronizing dick if I ask that question that way? I worry,
Yeah.
I worry, but I guess the what I'm hearing though is, fuck your worry, Brett, go do that thing. Right? Don't be worried about it. The benefit outweighs my discomfort because whatever, dude. It's just, so what?
So I guess it can be done in a patronizing way.
Yeah, it's the tone and the delivery, because the way you're saying it, I'm like, that works for that. I love what you're saying. So sorry.
So I mean, it's also, at the very basic level, I think any reasonable person will see you saying, hey, I see a problem in that my con, my space, whatever it is not diverse enough. And I want to do something to see if I can fix that. And I'm going to try this. And I'm sorry if I'm saying it the wrong way, but my heart is honestly in the right place. And I think people will get that.
Well, fair enough. That makes sense. I like that.
Another thing that every convention must have is a solid code of conduct.
Mm-hmm.
Like a code of conduct, and it's got to be visible and everybody's got to see it. Like it's got to be on your website. It's got to be on the door of the game area. Like you need to send it to every DM and, prep them to be able to interact with it and let them know what it is and let them know that they are required to shut down any bullshit at their table. Like they are required to shut down bullshit at their table. That code of conduct strongly tells the woman who's afraid of a table getting kind of rapey, or a person of color who's afraid of hearing whatever.
No, that makes sense.
At their table, that it's just not going to fly. And the thing is, you have to lead from the top. You have to walk the walk. Like Dave Cody, who's kind of the boss dog of everything that I need to ever think about for DragonCon, is very strongly said, I believe in women at my con, I believe in people of color at my con, I believe in making my con fully accessible for anybody who's mobility limited, and I believe 100% in having full LGBT plus representation. And anything else is absolutely unacceptable, and I will fire you from my con if you mess with me. Well, all right then.
No, that's good. I mean, I walked 2 people out of my con for similar issues.
Yeah.
No, it's a thing. It's a thing you've got to do, and it's one of those pieces that goes to. No, I mean you've got to. You could say the thing all day long, and that's a piece I've heard from when I had the 2 altercations. Altercations too strong, but I had the 2 instances at my convention that I dealt with. I had people talk to me afterwards and say, "This is the first time I'd seen a thing," and I'm like, "Really?"
No.
And they're like, "No,
it's probably the first time they've seen it, but it's not the
they
first
saw
time
anybody
it's
do
happened.
They saw anybody do anything about it." I'm like, "Really? Are you kidding?" Because again, me being me, I'm like, "Holy shit, you're kidding me! That all the horror stories I've seen are true." And they're like, "Oh yeah, I just get used to certain things." I'm like, "Oh, that's fucking stupid."
No,
as
it's
hell.
true. It's true. And I've been running. So this is 2019. I've been running D&D conventions for about the better part of 20 years, not quite 20 years. And in that time, during 3rd edition or 3.5, I had to ask somebody to leave the con because there was a question about whether or not his adventure records were actually a thing, which is an old reference from Living Greyhawk from 3.5. If you don't know what it is, doesn't matter. We thought he was cheating. So he was walked out of the con, never to be seen again. Like, never to be seen again. And then I literally did not have another problem until late last year. And somebody pitched a fit at a table about LGBT themes in Dragon Heist. And I said, you 2 are not only uninvited to my con, but don't ever come back to Atlanta. I've thrown you out of the city, which of course I can't really do. But I said, I am absolutely refunding your money, and then I'm giving you double your money back to get you your gas money. Just get out of town. Don't ever come back.
I like that. That's a big boot. I like it.
Yeah, I was pretty hot. And the thing is, everybody looked at me like with these huge big eyes. They're like, "Oh my gosh, did you see what she did?" And I'm like, "Dude, that does not fly at my cons." And once you do that once, everybody realized the boundary has been tested. and you do walk the walk of your code of conduct, and there are dramatically fewer problems afterwards.
No, that's very true. I've witnessed that firsthand.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely true.
So having that code of conduct is mission critical. And if you're out there listening and you run a con or you run a game day, just Google code of conduct or look at the ones for some of the big cons in your area, because I guarantee you they have them. The big conventions like Dragon Con or Gen Con or PAX have to have them for liability and insurance purposes that are not really issues for smaller cons. But the smaller cons still have to have them also for some CYA. But it's gotten to the point where every convention runner I've met wants to do the right thing. And that's just part of doing the right thing.
Well, I'll tell you, having that documented, if you don't have it documented, the person that you have to deal with, whatever their hang up is, whatever their fucked up problem is you have a harder leg to stand on. If for no other reason, you now have a sword and a shield in your hand that says, I have a code of conduct. You've read it. It was required. I've told everybody everybody here knows what it is. You, sir, madam, or whatever you are failing. You're a punk. Get the fuck out. You can do that if you have things documented. And just from, it's that piece of like corporate world that comes down to everyday hobby life, is that writing it down and making it be official gives you a lot more power to enforce something when you see bullshit happen. Well,
it's also the rule. It's not just you doing something personal to them. Like that is the rule. I wrote it down. That's why it's a rule.
Yep. It's equally enforced across the whole con.
Yep. And the thing is, you can't just write it down. You have to display it prominently. And you have to pull your DMs aside, or if you have somebody running your DMs, like Dragon Con, like, Lordy, there is no time for the board to pull every person who DMs for me aside and say, do the thing. They rely on me as their lieutenant to do that for them. Mm-hmm. But I have to talk to every single DM. We have conference calls, and I go through the code of conduct. And I'm like, if you see this, this, and this, you must respond to it that, and that way. And believe me, you raise your hand and you let me know, because as the DM, you are not the police. You are just the person who calls the police, and then you come over and I will solve everything.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So having that code of conduct is super important.
So is there anything more on cons? I'm thinking this is a good spot to shift to game stores a little bit, because it feels very similar. Now with the code of conduct, I mean, I think about that and looking at like the game store perspective.
Gotta have it.
Yep. Okay.
Gotta have it.
Yeah.
A lot of game stores don't, because from insurance and CYA and corporate whatever, it's not strictly required. However, a game store is a really small. I don't care how big your game store is. It becomes a very small environment between the boss or the owner and the staff. And what that boss does, the staff will model. It's just human psychology. That is just how it works. So if the boss owner says, here's the code of conduct, and it's in a notebook behind the register and we're never going to talk about it again, then that is going to send a certain set of signals. Or if the boss says instead, this is my code of conduct, it's also on the front door, it's also on the inside of every door in the bathroom, and it's also laminated and on the front of the card case. And this is
prominently displayed. Can you not read?
Right.
This is how we behave here.
And all of my employees are required to be vigilant for any of these things going on in it. And anybody who comes in to judge Magic or other card games or DM or run anything, any kind of position of like pseudo power, but not an employee, is required to go over it and know it. And I have escorted customers to the door. Then you get a very different environment.
Yeah, I think how do I want to say this? So game stores, because especially brick and mortars, right? They're so small, or they tend to be small. They're like one paycheck to paycheck. I can maybe buy a bologna sandwich this week type of sometimes. And I can definitely feel the hesitancy coming from somebody going, are you fucking kidding me, Paige? What if I threw everybody out who did that? I'd have no store left. You know, I could hear that
it's
coming.
It's the opposite, though. Because if you throw out one guy who's being creepy or handsy or stalkery towards a woman, you've told 50% of the people that live in your area that you're going to stick up for them.
No, I like that. That's very true.
And everything else just follows. Plus, in addition, it's the right thing to do. Like, it's just, by any measure or social good you want to call it, the right thing to do.
True enough. Okay.
And if you get a reputation for doing the right thing, you'll be surprised what happens. Somehow all the assholes start saying, that person has a reputation for doing the right thing. I think I'll go elsewhere.
Yeah, well, when the feedback is I can't be a douchebag over there, I can't, be a dick to women over there, I don't want to go there anymore. That's like, all right, I didn't want you there anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very, very true. And at a game store, so what I have seen, the biggest evolution, here's a bright way to put it, the biggest evolution I've seen in game stores in the past 40 years, 30 years, 35 years, is that game stores have realized that 50% of the people in their service area are women, and they can make a whole lot more money if they sell things that those women want to buy.
Okay.
What? Rocket science. So
My wife is only a casual gamer, and I'm buying it. No, I'm buying what you're putting down.
And every woman who plays games in game stores, if you talk to her and say, why do you go to this game store instead of that game store? Well, that other game store is kind of scary. It's creepy.
Mm-hmm.
So one way you decrease the creep factor, which is reducing those barriers, is you look at your advertising. Again, are all the posters on your walls just tits and ass?
Yeah, no, I mean, how many comic book stores have you gone into, right?
Right.
Where you're like, okay, there's Lady Death, and there's this one, and this
Psylocke
one, and this one.
in her lingerie.
I mean, it's sexy as all hell, I won't deny, but there are children and other people here, and there's ladies here, and other people who may not be. Why does this have to be the only thing you have on the walls?
Right, and the thing is, like, Psylocke in her lingerie is super sexy. Like,
oh, yeah.
Nobody denies that, and there's nothing wrong with that. People like looking at sexy, good-looking people. Like, that's cool. But if that's all you have, then you're sending a message. Like, the rat queens, who are super sexy, like, nobody will tell you otherwise, are super sexy, but they're also super powerful. They're also out there kicking a whole lot of ass. Like, put a rat queens poster up there. Tell me you guys know who the rat queens are.
I don't. I feel like an idiot. I feel like
I'm not a comic book guy.
Fair. So the Rat Queens are an all-women D&D adventuring party, also comic book. And they are... I'll educate you on Rat Queens.
Do it.
Later. It's good for your life.
That's what we're here for.
I'm looking at... absolutely. I'm looking at the art. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're sexy, but they're super badass. And,
they look totally badass.
They are badass.
Oh my God.
So if you're showing the girls and women at your store that women can be powerful, women can be badass. If you look at some of the other comics that have come out, like the new She-Ra show.
Yep. Both my daughter and my son, AJ and Alana, love that show. They both love the hell out of that thing.
Like girls love that stuff. They love it. So if you show women in a diversity of roles, like they're powerful, they're funny, they're heroes, they're they can be tragic heroes. So if you show the Wonder Womans along with the Psylocks, you are sending a message. Another big thing is put some black people posters up in your store. Like Miles Morales. I don't know if you've seen Into the Spider-Verse. If you haven't, please do.
I have. That's on my list. All my buddies good. My friends have told me they would watch that above any other Marvel movie. They love it so much.
I'm not saying it's my favorite Marvel movie because I'm a big fan of the Winter Soldier, But it's certainly up there. But putting pictures of black people and brown people in comics, and God bless, I know there's not enough. But making sure your art is representative is super important, because you're saying to those children who are coming into your store to read comics that black people and brown people are expected to be here. They're heroes. They're flat out heroes. They're unequivocally heroes.
One of my favorite stories, I can't remember if Eloy Lasanta, when he was on the last time, if he mentioned this on the show, but he was telling us how he was at Gen Con one year when, what was the one, White Wolf, it was their fantasy game. I can't remember what the hell it was. But they had, on the cover, they had this gorgeous African-American woman, and he said, I saw these two black ladies walk up and said, do you have anything on it with her? I want to buy that book. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, that's powerful. And I told that story to Jen Brinkman she's a big DCC person, Dungeon Crawl Classics and stuff, and a couple of the other folks within the DCC space, and they have said that when they're at the booth, one of the archetype characters they have, she has the big Afro puffs, and she's that girl, and she's just a total badass. And talking to the people at the booth, they're like, I will get people coming, I want her on anything. Give me that. Because it's so not represented that what's out there. So the idea of, well, I don't know if it just logistically, I don't know if it'll sell. Oh, dude, it's going to sell. It's going to move.
Obviously, 5th edition D&D, kicking ass. Like, was it last year, 2 years ago, where, I don't know, somebody at WotC, Merles or Lindsay or somebody, pointed out that I have to find the tweet later, more 5th edition players' handbooks had been sold than every other edition put together.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw the same stat.
If you open your 5th edition player's handbook, the very first picture on the inside is of an extremely dark-skinned black man with a scimitar in each hand, and he's not Drizzt. He's definitely not a drow. And arrows on his back fighting goblins.
Yep.
And the fighter and the wizard, obviously two of the most iconic classes in Dungeons & Dragons, are both typified by people with brown skin. Like, WotC has started to figure it the heck out. Finally. It took 5 editions, but I'm proud of them. At least
they got there.
Yeah.
No, it makes it's goofy because I have heard the argument, and I'll be honest, I have made the argument in my younger, stupider past of like, well, why does that matter? I don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And that's adorable for someone to say that.
It's fine when you're 12 and you don't know better.
But, I'm 46, and I have friends, and I've known people, and I know lots of people are interested in things, and by not doing a thing, I am, even quote-unquote accidentally, or however it happened, I am alienating a group of people simply by non-including them.
Yep.
By non-inclusion, I have alienated them from this is part of you.
And it's not intentional. It's not intentional.
And that I guess that's the piece, is that why not take the time to make it intentionally inviting, right?
See, the thing is, like, we were raised for 30 years for D&D was a bunch of white guys. It's everything we saw. It's everything we knew. And I DM a lot. I DM at a lot of cons. And I purposely make a lot of my bad guys female. And it will blow people's minds when I say, the orc chieftain swings her axe at you, roll 18, I'm coming in, buddy. And they're like, whoa, wait, did you see that she? I'm like, yeah, the orc chieftain's a she. Female? And I'm like, yeah, yes, absolutely.
And this is scary. How and why?
No, it's not scary. It's just like in their head when I was talking about this big orc chieftain with rippling muscles and a big bloody axe and skins and a hat with horns on it. They assumed it was a dude. Why? Because we trained them for 30 years to think that they were all dudes. So,
no, that's a good point. I mean, we've got to get better. And it's going to take a little bit. It's going to take a little bit of time, but that's not an excuse for laziness either.
Yeah,
right?
like this is I honestly think we are living in the golden age of Dungeons and Dragons, because the amount of input and players and publishers and art directors and writers and showrunners and convention organizers that are women, that are LGBT plus folks, and that are people of color is bigger than it's ever been, and it's getting bigger all the time. Plus, somewhere D&D got cool. I'm really confused at how that happened, but I don't want to say anything too loudly because I don't want it to change.
No, I'm with you. There was Sean and I talked about that a while back, and we were at GaryCon, and I see Joe Manganiello, and super sweet guy, and Satine Phoenix, and these very famous, very popular people, and you're like, wow.
Vin Diesel plays D&D. I mean, oh my God.
Like, okay, I think, oh my God, the one woman who was in the movie Red with Bruce Willis, she played with Vin Diesel at one point. It was just
Helen Mirren?
Yeah, Helen Mirren apparently.
Really?
With Vin Diesel at one point.
Love Helen Mirren, so to know that she plays D&D, my heart grew 3 sizes.
Even if she only just played it once, I don't care, right? It's just really cool, and it became a thing, and I think there is perhaps, and this is almost like a jump into home gaming as a player, is where we have a thing. I had a buddy of mine ages back. I haven't seen. I've got a bunch of guys named John. This John I have not seen or gamed with in many years. But he was getting angry with certain games coming out, newer versions of D&D, because it was too easy to learn.
Yeah.
He had this love of the fact that only after decades of studying the Gygaxian lack of prose did you actually figure out how fucking Ultravision worked, right?
Well,
and he hated that. And I'm like, guy, why do you want that educational barrier of entry to be so high? And when I hear you talk about this, it reminds me of that conversation, how dumbfounded I was. Mm-hmm. That John looked me in the eye and said, well, it's too easy for people. I'm like, why do you want it to be hard? Just to justify how hard it was back then? For Christ's sake, you're not my grandfather. Come on, man. It
is. And back in the day, I played a lot of very technical 3.5. I could power game with the best of them. I had an archer character who had about 3 or 4 different classes and 3 or 4 different prestige classes. She had 2 belts of battle. She had a +3 holy Demonbane lightning longbow. It was a hot mess. If I could see it, I could kill it. It was amazing. And I DM'd a lot of very technical 3.5. And in my last game I DM'd was a Sheldamore Valley Meta Regional, which is again a Living Greyhawk thing, which will not make sense to anybody who's not ancient like me. And the bad guy was a cleric, and he had a succubus sorcerer girlfriend, and then a ghoul bard dirge singer corpse chanter MC, and then a chorus line of the drowned behind him, which it means nothing if you didn't play 3.5. But it was a lot of dudes, and he had 20 buffs on it. And my party was about APL 18 or so, and which means most characters were 18th level-ish, average to 18th level. And they came in with a greater dispel, some kind of bullshit metamagic empowered dispel, a reaving dispel, and then I don't know what else. And I'm like, all right, guys, okay, cool. Let me see if he keeps his buff. So roll. All right, so he's lost half. Great. Y'all go get lunch. I'm going to refigure out his stats. Then we'll pick right back up and we'll go. Here's $5. Give me a hot dog. And then I recalculated his stats and went up and go. And I'm like, this is not fun. This isn't fun for anybody.
Have you ever played Rollmaster or any of the?
Not for more than about an hour and a half.
I was gonna say what you just described to me makes me want to stab my eyes out. Worse than my worst Rollmaster game.
Yeah. In 5th edition, they've lowered the barrier for everything, and people have caught on. Lots of gaming companies have caught on. Shadowrun, which is a game I truly adore and have hated the rules for every edition, but I still love the game. And because it hit like a comet in about 1989 when I was a cheater in high school. It just blew up our D&D games.
Oh, it's same here. When that Elmore cover came out, you saw the Decker, the Spellcaster. I want this game. I must own it and live it. Yes,
we played it so hard. And the rules were crazy. You could put
that was bad.
Mana ball
so
down
bad.
that would burn down the whole city. Nothing would live except every orc or troll would be standing there looking at you, kind of blinking, and then dust the ash off their shoulders, and then just come over and destroy you. They are coming out with a new edition in a couple of months that's supposed to be streamlined, ease of learning, bring people on board. Like, these game systems are starting to get democratic.
You know what's interesting about it too, and I've had this conversation with a couple of my buddies and other people I've met over the years. I'm like, those other games are still out there, right?
Yeah.
With the power of drive-through RPG and the interwebs, I can find it, and I still have all of them. So my group, for whatever reason, had a hankering for a really uber tactical stuff. Fine, Pathfinder it is. Whack! I threw it out, and we're having a blast. We're having a lot of fun with it. It will wear out its welcome with me after this campaign is over, but it's still there. So just because there's a barrier of entry that's lowered for this version of your favorite thing doesn't mean the previous version is dead.
Yep.
You know, if you really like first edition AD&D, you know, you can get Osric or not, or do whatever the hell you want. It's still fucking out there. You could. I told my son AJ, I said, you don't ever have to buy another game other than the first game if you really, really want to.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a thing you can do. And I think about that conversation in this one right now, and I extrapolate that out to people and images and advertising and everything else we talked about earlier. And I'm like, yeah, why would I make any of this harder for someone to get? I have so much goddamn fun with this hobby. Why would I not want somebody else to have fun?
Yeah. Why would I not want to take this to other people? Why would I want to keep it away from anyone? Unless they're a jerk.
Yeah, I mean, I proselytized this to every family member and friend I had for the longest time. Like, you got to try this. Oh my God, it's this new game. You got to play this game.
And it got cool enough where you don't feel super creepy about doing it. Like, that's the lovely thing.
Yes, it is. It's very lovely. It absolutely is.
Because if you had done this in the late 80s or the 90s, you'd have been a creep.
Yeah, that wouldn't have gone over so well.
No. So with your game stores, in order to make them more inviting, these games are set up for it. There's a real hunger for so many people to try it. Like, there's a lot of people in whatever zip code your game. Yes, you, whoever's listening to me with your game store, you in your zip code, 50% of your customers are women, and a lot of them have heard about D&D and are kind of interested in it and are a little creeped out. One way you can invite them into your store is inviting them into your store. Specifically, you say, hey, we're having a women's and non-binary persons game day. You get some women in your area to run it. You set aside a special day for it, and then those women and non-binary persons know that they can go there and they're not going to get shit.
Yeah, because the whole day is for that. And there's a code of conduct on the door, as we talked about, so everybody knows. And
somebody's going to pitch a fit. Well, why do they get a women's game day? When do we get a guys' game day? Every day is guys' game day. Like, every day is guys' game day. Like, there have been days when there have been no women or hardly any women in the store. Let them have one day. Let them have one day.
I've never been kicked off of a table because I was a guy. Yeah. I've never had anybody treat me bad. I sat down at a table when it's mostly women or LGBT people, and they're like, "Oh, we got an open spot. You want to play?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right, I'll play. Whatever." No one's ever kicked me out or given me a weird look. They're like, "Oh my God, you want to play? Let's give me your sit down."
I'm not the gamer's boyfriend.
Exactly.
Right. Oh my God.
Oh, lovely.
Well,
okay.
Right, Paige?
Yeah. So so run a women's game day. There will be somebody who will pitch a fit. Let them go. Let them pitch that fit. Hopefully, most of the rest of your customers who, demographically speaking, I'm willing to bet on a statistical basis are heterosexual males. Let them know you are introducing ladies to Dungeons and Dragons. Let that percolate a minute. Ladies. Dungeons and Dragons.
So, or we're talking about old school stereotypes. What's the fear passes, and they realize what might happen, right? But no, I'm dead serious. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Yeah, so
right.
Have a ladies' game day.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
And the other thing is, nobody wants to look foolish. Nobody wants to look dumb. And so a lot of people look at Dungeons and Dragons like, well, I don't really know how to play, and I don't want to go, and I'll be the only person who doesn't know, and I'm going to look like an idiot, and it's just not worth that. I'm not going to do that to myself. By saying it's a women's and non-binary persons or an LGBT game day and saying new players enthusiastically welcome, DM's ready to teach new players the game, then you're setting it up to relieve the fears.
What's the best of both worlds? You're getting the other half of the demographic who may not be in your store spending, guess what, money, because that's what people spend, and that new person who's been walking by your store but hasn't, for whatever reason, decided to grab the handle and walk in.
Yeah.
Now you've done two things.
Yep. So setting up a women's day is a good thing. I've done one in Atlanta, and it went over great. I've just been too busy and hadn't done another one, but the Atlanta Dungeons & Dragons group did something called Ladies' Night, and it was a week-long celebration of women in gaming. So it was women and non-binary DMs, and every time I say women, if you're wondering, I mean, of course, trans women, because trans women are women, period, end of story. But women's and non-binary persons as DMs and as players, people who are men identifying were always welcome as well. But it was just a way to really celebrate the women in Atlanta who play games and run them very well.
Very cool.
And it was a week-long celebration, man. It was amazing. And it's all volunteer. So run a women's game day. You'd be surprised. Or not even a whole game day, just game night, one game. Let them run something.
So that takes me to talking about like home games and players' perspective.
Sure.
So if we take it out of there down to like what can I, one person, do? One of the things you mentioned, there's volunteers. While you were talking, that hit me because like my daughter wanted to run this game she had made up at EverCon. So I helped her figure out an adventure. So she made up. It was great. She had stuffed animals and all these boys and girls were playing with her. She had a blast. She was exhausted. It was just a great game.
That's pretty cool.
It was tons of fun. And one of the things she said was, she's like, I'm really nervous and I'm really scared. And I said, well, one of the things you got to remember, Alana, is that all the other kids are going to play with you because we capped the age, so they'd be about her age. I said, they're going to see you as somebody who is strong enough to try this, and they're going to have a lot of fun. So she got done, and one of the things that she was so happy about was everybody else, all the other girls and boys who played with her, there were 5 total, that said, could I try to do what you did? And she said, well, of course you can. So I look at that and I say, what Paige is saying here, if there's someone listening to us, you're like, well, my game store doesn't have one. I think it's legit to say you could go ask.
Yeah.
You may well find out a thing about your game store that makes you uncomfortable. Like, oh, wow, they don't like that type of thing here. But I would strongly encourage any women listening to us, any LGBT person, to say, hey, I'm going to go to my local game store and say, hey, could I run an event of some kind? Because most game store owners I know, they're stretched thin. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of time. If you're like, look, are you volunteering to run an event at my store? Okay, good.
Yes.
I don't know many games. The few game store owners I do know personally, they're all like, could somebody please volunteer to do anything?
Yes.
I will let you in, damn near,
Yes.
So
and
I think
if you're
that's
out
a good
there
way to go.
listening, grab me on Twitter, grab me on Facebook, ask me questions. I will walk you through the process. We can get you through this.
So is a good way to. So obviously we talked a lot about D&D. We've flitted in with a couple other ones. Do you see the AL stuff, the organized play, as a good way to help break people into to knock the barrier of entry down? Does that help make things inviting?
I think so, and here's why. So you can say a lot of things about organized play and Adventurers League, and God knows a lot of people have.
I hate it. I love it.
Right,
there we go.
Right. But it is a consistent product, generally. The adventures are not going to have scenes of sexual violence in them. And you can't say that if you walk into a store and play somebody's homebrew. You have no idea what you're going to get. And God knows there are plenty of stories of somebody walking into a game store playing homebrew and coming up with something terrible.
Yes.
And Adventurers League will never do that to you. Adventurers League has a code of conduct. Well, no, I take that back. Adventurers League used to have a whole code of conduct. Now places that want to run certain big events have to have it. But in general, the D&D Adventurers League DMs are pretty good people. But for certain, the Adventurers League administration is extremely woman-friendly. And they have plenty of women on staff. I mean, not enough because It was all men for a long time, so once it's all women for an equal number of years, then we'll call it enough. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, when will there be enough women Supreme Court justices? When there are 9.
When we stop asking that question,
right?
For God's sakes,
right? But Adventurers League, from the get-go, from its DNA, is designed to be friendly to minority players, and it is designed to be friendly to women. So I think it's a great way to start. I think that's it. I like that thought, because it gives you, if you're thinking about volunteering to do something at a game store, even at a convention or whatever, there's a canned, curated experience that's in this that lets you have, there are bumpers, if you will, of your own personal safety. Like, look, if I'm branching into this volunteering thing, I want to do something that tries to knock down or be a little more inviting. It's a good way to put your toe in with something familiar called Dungeons and Dragons that's built up and has a good support structure on it. So you're not doing it all by yourself. It's not like I sat down with Sean and said, all right, we want to do a thing. How are we going to do it? All right, let's get Paige in here. Let's craft this whole new thing. No, this is already existing. Yep. You can tap right into that vein. I like that. And plus, it's a lot, from its DNA, it's designed to be drop in, drop out. Most games are an adventure which takes 2 to 4 hours to play-ish normally. You come in, you play for one night. The next time, you either don't have to show up, there's no expectations like a campaign would have, or you can get a completely different table and group of people. Like, it's the best kind of speed dating for gamers.
Yeah, not fair enough.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, that's a way to get from like some of that from the home area out. Are there things, and this is kind of where I know some people I've spoken to get irritated. Are there things at home when I'm running a game, or are there things as a player that I'm doing, because people will say, well, it's my friends, I don't have to do X or whatever. Are there still things that you look at it and you say, you know what, guys, because it's, again, mostly guys, if you did this, that, or the other thing, that would help you when you went outside these 4 basement walls or whatever it is?
Sure.
Again, I don't know, so I'm asking.
Yeah, so look around at your home game. It's probably you and some number of guys. That's fine. You may not have any women at your table, and you may not have an extra seat where you could invite one at your table. But maybe the next time a seat opens up, you ask a woman to play. That's one thing you can do, and that can be frightening because maybe you don't have any women who play that are friends. That's why Adventurers League is a good thing, because you can go around and you can play with a bunch of different people. It's like, hey, I played with that one. I kind of like her. What do you think? She'd be a good fit? Yeah, I think she'd be pretty cool. She'd do right on our table. All right, cool. But even if you don't have a woman at your table, you should consider the option of making your game more woman-friendly, because you are modeling behavior at your personal game table that's going to stick with you when you go out into the real world at a con or a store and actually play perhaps with a woman at your same table. Are 50% of your NPCs women?
Oh, good question.
If not, why not?
Oh, good question. Yeah.
They better be Wizards of the Coast. I'm running your stuff.
Yeah. So, and they probably are, but here's a true story. So Ben and I are in charge of Elmwood for the convention created content program for Wizards of the Coast for DragonCon. What that is that means DragonCon writes adventures, and Ben and I are large and in charge of that. And they're set in a little town called Elmwood. And the reason why we picked Elmwood, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons why we picked Elmwood is because in D&D Adventurers League canon, it was burned to the ground. Completely wiped out. And we're like, well, that means we can bring it back and make it anything we want. So we decided to make all of our adventures take place in Elmwood. And when they first started the Adventurers League, or the Convention Created Content program, it was in the spring of 2016. And you had to have like the adventures ready 6 months before the con or 3 months before the con, and then your outlines in, so on and so forth. And I realized they just started the program, and if we wanted content at DragonCon, we had to write 3 adventures in like 5 weeks.
Damn.
And I said, Ben, I love you, and we cannot do this by ourselves and still have jobs. And he's like, you're right, and I like food and a house and cats, and I can't have any of these if I don't have a job. Like, you're right. So we assembled a whole team of people, and we're like, all right, this team of 20 people, we're going to write 3 full-length 4-hour adventures in 5 weeks. And here's the project management, and here's how it's got to go. Here's our Gantt chart, and we cannot deviate. So one of the things we did is I took the town, kind of got the structure set up, and I said, hey, friend 1, friend 2, and friend 3, who are all guys, because most of the designers were guys. Not all, but most. I said, I need you to come up with the NPCs for the town. So here, I need about 50 NPCs. We're going to be with these NPCs for the rest of our careers, so make sure they're good. Go. And then they brought it back to me, and 90% of the NPCs that they made were white, and something like 80% of them were male. And I'm like,
so when you say they were white, now I'm going to ask the stupid guy question. Did they specifically call that out, or was it just so glaringly obvious by reading them?
It was, so when I asked them which ones were not white, they said, oh, that one, that one, and that one, and that one in this dragon order.
Okay,
And I'm like,
got it.
All right, first of all, fail. You're going to go back, and 51% of the NPCs will be female. 2, you're going to have at least, I don't know, 40% of them be non-white in some way, shape, or another. At least.
Mm-hmm.
Come back to me with that. And these are not evil guys. These are guys that I love. They're people I have been playing D&D with for many years, and they're all gentle, kind, woke, more or less guys. But it didn't occur to them to make 50% of the NPCs female.
Which is interesting. And it's interesting because I think about all the world building I've done and so on, and you think about it like, well, yeah, I try to model this, or you want it to, feel real. When the fact is, when I, walk down the street, 50% that's just how that is. This is the real world, and if you want to model something that feels real and genuine, it can't be what you described there. That makes sense. But you have to think about it. Go, oh shit, yeah, I didn't even realize I was doing that.
And
Fuck
you
me.
have to make sure that your NPCs, your women NPCs, exhibit a realistic range of behaviors, attitudes, and outcomes. Like, not every if you have 50% of your NPCs that are female and they're all beautiful, not physically powerful, conniving, and manipulative, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like what do I want to say? It's almost like the tropes in that space are even more limited.
Well,
so for Christ's sake, break them.
Yeah, but you know what? The tropes in that space are more limited. But God bless Brienne of Tarth. Like she is a model. Do you have Brienne of Tarth in your game? Do you have only one of them? Why is there only one?
Okay.
If there's not a big, strong, tanky woman or 12, why not?
Fair enough. Well, makes sense.
And if the reason why not is because, well, it's not historically accurate. Are you telling me you're making a game with elves, dragons, and magic historically accurate, and the type of historical accuracy you've chose to bring in is misogyny?
Yeah. I had this argument with some friends of mine, and we were talking. I can't not remember the name of the author. It was not George R. Martin. It was somebody totally different. And we were arguing about the fact that his book had a tremendous amount of just obnoxious treatment of women and whatever. And my buddy was saying, well, my wife really likes this. I said, how the hell? And he said, well, I told her that's just kind of how it was back then. I'm like, okay, first things first. There's no back then. This is made up. There's no.
And
this is all pretend. Why would you do that?
And unless you're a historical scholar of the Middle Ages, I bet whatever fucked up perspective you have on Middle Ages history is wrong.
Yeah, or very, very blindery skewed.
Yes.
Interesting. No,
Yeah.
it's a good point. Okay.
So make 50% of your NPCs female and make them a diverse variety of types. In fact, when you make an NPC, say, all right, here's an NPC. They're going to be the lieutenant of the person who's not a bad guy, but he's just got, or this bad guy has a competing kind of, like, this person wants to save all the dragons because they're important at keeping Tarrasques at bay, and this other person wants to slaughter all the dragons because they eat people. Mm-hmm. So this lieutenant has these qualities. And then once you get the qualities set up, say, well, what would this person look like if they were a guy? What would this person look like if they were a girl? What would this person look like if they were non-binary? What would this person look like if they were trans? Like, try on some of those different types, and then maybe don't go for guy every time.
Yeah, I think there's even the smallest, most almost useless way. I don't know a better way to. I'm losing words right now. But even if you just looked at it and said, "Hey, if you do this, you have expanded the types of NPCs you have."
Yeah, and your game is more memorable if you flip those tropes.
Yeah, like, if you're used to A and B, and now you have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Hey, guess what? Your world got broader, wider, deeper, all that coolness. And it's going to be, instead of same old, people are like, oh, this is different. Yeah. And even if that's not for shock value, but you're leaving money on the table. Yeah.
Part of what makes Brienne of Tarth interesting in Game of Thrones is the fact that she is a woman. Because you would expect a big tanky fighter like that who's nobility and chivalry and I stick to my word and all that. You'd expect that to be a guy, but she's interesting specifically because she's a woman. Because the trope got flipped. Mm-hmm. She's interesting also because she's a cool character, but interesting because the trope got flipped. Also, as a DM for a home game, like, don't do terrible things to women in your adventure. If something terrible is going to happen to somebody, maybe have it happen to a male character instead. Maybe have it happen to male characters 50% of the time. Just saying.
No, that's legit. I mean, there's a like I said, if you're only doing it to the left, or to the right, you have lost 50% of all the story possibilities out there. Mm-hmm. You've lost a perspective, and everybody's like, oh. One of the jokes on this show is that during my Vampire the Masquerade days, I overused dead babies, and
that's the thing.
And everybody's like, "Oh, it's dead baby. How deep are they, Brad? Do I need a pitchfork or whatever?" You know, it was just it's the depth of the dead babies is what shocks people now. So, but it's it's similar. They're like, oh, it's another skeevy, conniving, thin, gorgeous woman who's out for my head. Oh, okay, another one of those.
But when that same person is Littlefinger instead.
Yeah, you change it and you use these other pieces out there. These are components in your storytelling toolbox that you're letting get rusty. You're not using this stuff. And this is the real world. Why not use this stuff to help spice things up?
And it makes you a better DM. It absolutely makes you a better DM because it makes you think about things a little differently.
Yeah, no, I get it. That totally makes sense.
Yep. Which I guess takes you to kind of the player level. What can you do?
Absolutely.
So one of the best things you can do as a guy who plays tabletop role-playing games is meet women who also play tabletop role-playing games. Like, just meet them like people and talk to them. Not ones you think are attractive. Just ones that are interesting. Like one that is a writer that you like. Strike up a conversation. Hey, you wrote this adventure. I was really interested in what you thought about this, that, and the other. Just get to know them like human beings. And the more women who play games that you know, it gives you a broader range of understanding and appreciation of what women can do with this game, which is some pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah, and Sean and I, we joked about it earlier, right? And for God's sakes, she's not just the girlfriend of the actual gamer, right?
That's a good way to get stabbed.
Exactly. Good Don't do that. When you're at the game store and you're at the table and you see that person doing something really cool, go, have you read this book?
I'm going to start telling people I'm the boyfriend of the gamer.
I'm the boyfriend of the gamer?
Don't ask if they have read that book. Say, hey, what what did you think of this book?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. No, I like that even better. Yeah. This book's awesome.
What did you like about it?
What did you like about it? I haven't read that yet. Oh my God, you've got to read this. Then Don't. Yes, I get what you're saying. Yes.
And I understand that there is a desire to be helpful, and bless you if you want to be helpful. Don't. Just don't. Don't do it. True story. So when 4th edition came out, my friend Michael Roderick and I went to Gen Con because... Gen Con? Yeah, it came out at Gen Con, 4th edition did. Mm-hmm. And we were playing. It was the new game, and we were excited. And oh my God, it was going to be so great because Rod and I had been playing D&D for most of 3.5. And we sit down at the table, and we'd been in some of the playtests together, and we were super excited. And, I got my character sheet, and I was looking it over, and, whatever. And bless his heart, the poor little guy next to me saw me looking at my character sheet, and he couldn't have been 20-something, I guess. I got socks older than this kid. And he sees me looking at my character sheet, and he's like, hey, do you want some help understanding your character sheet? I've been playing D&D a while, and I can help you. Rod just put his head in his hands, is like, I'm going to have to bail Paige out of jail. I don't know that I have enough money, because he was convinced I was going to go over the table and rip this guy's throat out with my teeth. And I just snatched my character sheet out of his hands, and I said, I got it, thanks. There's no way for me to say, I've literally been playing D&D longer than you have been drawing breath on this earth. And I know he was just trying to be helpful, and this is not to be misconstrued as any sort of an apology if you're out there listening to me, because it is absolutely not. But just don't.
No,
If a woman wants or needs help, she will come to you and she will ask, or she will figure it out herself.
One of Sean and my friends, Mark Hunt, we were talking at Gary. I was talking with him GaryCon a couple years ago, and we were just talking about different things, game experiences and stuff. And he said, yeah, every once in a while I still get some stupid little white kid, Mark's African American guy. Mm-hmm. Wants to explain AD&D to me. And I said, Mark, are you kidding me? Mark's older than all three of us, right? So right. Mark's retired Air Force. And he said, my favorite thing to do is when they say something like, hey, do you understand or do you whatever? He said, I go through the nittiest, nattiest piece of the rule and say, well, I'm really concerned about how the game master is going to play with the Horn of Valhalla, because if it's version blah, 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 I'll pull that out, and they just look at me like, what?
Yep.
So then I open up my dice bag and I throw out the old ones, the old crusty, nasty ones, and put those out. So yeah, these are my first ones. he said, I just play them. He's like, if that's how you want to be, I'm going to make you feel like an ass. I'm like, that's fucking brilliant, dude.
and the thing is, I understand it's not done to be awful, but just... don't do it.
Yeah, I think the important piece is, quite frankly, if someone needs help, they'll ask. And sometimes if they look like they're struggling, that's part of the game master's job, is say, hey, do you need something, whatever. Or if they're like, the other piece sometimes is, and you tell me if I'm wrong on this page, I've looked at women gamers and I've said, are you having trouble trying to figure out what to do? Am I not being clear? And they're like, I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to back off and move. But I try to ask that same question of everybody who looks like they're distraught.
Yeah.
And I think by asking the same question of the men as you do the women, or anybody, the people of color as you do the straight white guys or whatever, you say, look, are you confused? Because you look confused. No, Sean, you look confused too. You good? No, you're not very clear. All right, fine. Let me reset the whole stage, because I'm obviously confusing everybody.
Sure.
And I think that way of trying to be helpful is nicer than singling somebody out and saying, you seem like you don't know how to play. Allow me to assist.
Right. Allow me to shove all of my dice up your nose one by one.
That's a good way to
really
get that
big
to happen.
D20. Yeah, Rod was convinced he was going to have to be explaining it to the police. However, on the other hand, as a person playing D&D who is interested in making the hobby a better place for women, you do need to jump in sometimes on other guys. And the most powerful weapon in your entire arsenal is giving them a look, kind of raising an eyebrow and going, dude, that is not cool. Like, dude, that is not cool contains, like, kryptonite for jerks. So if you see a guy, like, explaining to this woman who is getting ready to shove her dice up this guy's nose how to play her character, turn around and, like, tug his sleeve or look at him and say, dude, that's not cool. She's got this. Or if you see a dude's like, oh, what's your character wearing? Is she wearing underwear? Do they have lace? What color are they? Jump in with a, dude, that's not cool.
Yeah, that's it. You're not the first woman who has mentioned, female gamers told me that shit actually happens. So this is not. It does. Yeah, Paige is not making this up, people. This shit actually happens.
The thing is, none of us are making it up. It happens a lot, and guys either get it, and the ones who say that they don't believe us, like, I could put body cams on every woman and non-binary player out there, and have a suite of 10 YouTube channels video streaming the bullshit 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and they still wouldn't believe me. So I'm not interested in trying to explain it to the people who said, I don't believe you. Nothing. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking to them. Like, I will never reach them.
But you were absolutely dead right, though. I mean, there is a point. It's the, for evil to thrive, good people do nothing.
Yep.
And you see something fucking stupid happening, stomp that shit.
And you don't have to be, like, confrontational about it.
No, you don't. You don't have to do that.
Like, you don't have to throw a punch. I'm not asking you to go to jail. All I'm asking you to say is, dude, that's not cool.
Yeah, it's that cue. And if totally makes sense.
Yep. And, like, the minute anybody asks what the woman's character is wearing, the minute anybody brings up periods or pregnancy, the minute anybody brings up sexual violence, like, don't wait and see where it goes. Don't wait and see where it goes. Stop right there for those cues and say, dude, that's not cool.
Yeah, because that shit's not like,
and let's see what
yeah, exactly. Well, maybe there's a reason for it. No, there is no reason.
No,
there's not. Stop
not.
It. Just knock that shit off.
No woman wants that at the game table. Like, we just don't. That's not why we're here. We don't talk about whether or not male characters wake up with an erection in the morning. We're not talking about my character's cycles or pregnancy or any of that. We're just not doing it.
Makes sense.
So, dude, that's not cool. Kryptonite.
I think that works for everything. You'll hear people at game tables using certain slurs and other language, saying, "Well, it's that time in history," and blah blah blah.
No,
even if there's nobody at the table of that group, you knock that shit down.
Yep.
You don't let it happen.
And it kind of goes back to, since we're calling back to the beginning of the show, it kind of goes back to that code of conduct where you ended up walking somebody out of the con.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you launch one, dude, that's not cool, you've explained what social mores are good at this table and what aren't. And you have made it very clear what behavior is tolerable, and you've sent a message. And
agreed.
And people on both sides of that will receive it, and it's good.
No, that's awesome. Whew. Sean, have you got anything, man?
No.
Heavy stuff.
No. This is good. This is good shit, man. I like this.
I think it's, some of this is so, Paige, it's so baffling to me at times, because some of this sounds so crazily obnoxious. And it's not to say that doesn't happen. That don't take it that way. But to me, it's just so crazy how unaware some people are.
It is, and I don't want to give our listeners the impression that this is something that happens every day, and it's not something that happens every con, and it's not something that happens frequently. In fact, right now is the best time for women that has ever been for D&D. Like, the best. I have several lady friends who are in their 50s and early 60s who have been playing D&D since Dirt was new, and we've compared notes because we do, and this is a fabulous time for women in D&D. So part of what is making it fabulous is that people are having conversations like the one we've had here.
It's cool. No, it's good. It's something, and I'll be honest. Sometimes me, when I hear certain things, I think back and go, I used to do that. I was that guy.
We also
fuck me.
We also used to wet our diapers, and we've grown out of that too.
Exactly. Well, we don't need to talk about Sean.
Glad what do you mean used to?
Used to.
What are you talking about,
No,
Paige?
seriously though. Thank you for saying that, Paige, because it's not. I'm not looking for a pat on the head with getting better, but
but it's important to say. It's important to say.
You've got to acknowledge that. I used to do and say some horrible, shitty things. And just because that's how it's always been at my D&D table doesn't mean that's how it's always got to be going forward. And I don't have to put up with that crap.
Yep. Yeah, and as the hobby gets more diverse, we start seeing cooler games. We start seeing interesting stuff. Like there's a great game that just kickstarted called Nahual, which is a game of Mexican-American fantasy role-playing. And I have to look it up to get the full details on it, but basically, like, there's all these Mexican ghost heroes, and there's like monsters and coatls, and then you have the Crusader ghost. Very cool. It's like Harry Dresden, but set in Mexico City with kind of a different mythology behind it. Looks awesome. Looks great. There's another one coming from what's the name of it? There's another one coming from a predominantly African-American studio, so that's a Weird West.
I think I heard about that one. I can't remember the name of it. Somebody mentioned it. I can't remember it.
Haunted West. Haunted West is what it's called.
But there's so much cool stuff because we have all these... Sorry, tell who it's by. I didn't mean to stop
it's called Haunted West by Darker Hue Studios in Alexandria. That looks
Darker
amazing.
Hue. Those guys did... the Harlem. Did they do did Darker Hue do the Harlem Cthulhu game?
I don't recall. I recall the Harlem Cthulhu game, but I don't remember.
Talking about Harlem Unbound?
Yeah, I can't remember the same group. No.
And they just signed Kenneth Haidt.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I like his cooking too. So because of the way our hobby is expanding, we're starting to see things like the Uncaged anthology, which is, for our listeners who don't know, a 4-volume anthology of short one-shot D&D adventures that flipped feminist tropes. And the first volume is out, and it's gorgeous, and the adventures are really cool, and we would not have seen that 20 years ago. We see this Haunted West game by Darker Hue Studios that is taking a decidedly African-American viewpoint on the Weird West. It's going to be amazing. And you see all these cool games that you wouldn't have seen 20 years ago because our hobby is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you open it up, just if you look at it saying, hey, I have been inadvertently or advertently alienating 50%. I'm trying not to do that now. Mm-hmm. And even if I only get 25% of that 50%, fuck me, that's a lot of creativity that just got dumped into the pool. And it just is going to be so much deeper and richer because of it. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I'll tell you what, Sean, we've been going for a while, man. We should probably let Paige go.
We should. Paige.
Never let me go.
Never let Paige go. Paige, where can anybody on the interwebs or listeners find you and find out more about you and what you've got going on? Sure.
You can grab me on Twitter, which is Bethesda. No, I'm just kidding. You can grab me on Twitter at PaigeLeitman. That's at Paige Leitman. Or if you look on the big D&D Facebook group, that's D, the letter N, D, 5th, D&D 5TH. I'm a moderator there. I'm hard to miss. I'm pretty noisy. But those are the two best places to find me. And if you want to talk about a women's game day, or you're interested in the Uncaged anthology or some of these other games that I've mentioned, just hit me up.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. We know we're interrupting your Game of Thrones. You're like almost a day and a half behind.
So normally my Monday night game watches it together, but I watched it yesterday in preparation for the show. So it's I
saw the end of the last episode. I have not watched any of it because I just haven't had the time. I walked out as my wife was watching the final bit, and I kind of want to drop a spoiler right now, but I'm not going to be that dick. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Yep. Yes, I have opinions. If you'd like to discuss them with me, you know where to find me.
Paige, thank you. Your passion is awesome, and thank you
thanks.
for sticking it out all these years. And I'm glad it's getting better.
You know what?
Thank you.
D&D has been my number one hobby for years. I have met most of my friends and my husband playing D&D. I wouldn't change a thing.
Awesome.
Thanks, Paige.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
This has been a Litterbox Studio production.